Hello and welcome to the podcast. Every moment is sacred, where we interweave meditation and healing into everyday life. I am your host, Rain Elizabeth Stickney. Now, let us begin. Hey, my guest today is Donnia Anastasia, and she is a fellow healer as well as a beautiful soul who has become a dear friend of mine. Donnia is a holistic wellness practitioner, and she is specifically trained in Ayurvedic bodywork and wellness, lymphatic detoxification, muscular and fascial release, mindfulness and breathwork, as well as movement practices. She is an inner landscape transformation educator. She is a sacred and spiritual ceremony facilitator, as well as a holistic graphic designer for wellness businesses. Donnia has a podcast as well called We Are the Medicine. I highly recommend her show, and this conversation with Donnia is a 2-part episode. You get to hear part 1 today, and next week will be part 2. In part 2, she describes her guideposts, which she also shares on her show. So if you want a sneak peek of Donnia's guideposts to living and well-being and having a great life, go to We Are the Medicine. There are 2 podcasts with a similar name. So look for Donnia Anastasia's podcast, and you can get a sneak peek of those guideposts. Next week, we will get more of a candid look of those guideposts and continue the conversation that begins today. And today, we dive right into Donnia's name. I am so fascinated by her name that I ask right away to hear about the story of Donnia Anastasia. And as luck would have it, our conversation goes through a wonderful journey that ends up in discussing japa and mantra practice with meditation. A mantra that she loves is shared, as well as one of my own favorite mantras, and we discuss true identity and true name. So all wrapped up into one, we get to consider who we truly are together, how we have come to this moment, and Donnia shares her personal story. As a heads up and a warning for any young listeners and parents, caregivers, teachers, grandparents, whoever you might be who is supervising young minds listening to this show, there are some hot topics that I want you to be aware of. This podcast, Every Moment is Sacred, is intended for adults. And I have heard that there are some young ears who enjoy listening as well. So, in case these are topics better saved for older years, Donnia and I do discuss recovery from alcoholism, her mother's mental health, as well as her mother's passing, and Donnia finding herself in a parentified child role. The term parentified child is one of mine. That is not how Donnia describes her experience. But sometimes, as many of us know, a child is asked to take a caregiving role at a young age. And many children can probably identify with this, and it is a bit of a mature topic. So please use your best judgment about who listens and when. It is a conversation filled with compassion, gratitude, insight, and wisdom. And on the topic of gratitude, if you are not in my daily gratitude practice, please join me. I send out an email every day, usually in the morning. And in that email, you will find my personal gratitudes as well as the invitation to share your own. The content that I provide includes quotes and poems and pictures of real life. So there is an embodied feel of, yes, I am choosing to live my days and nights and mornings in gratitude. And you may join me. You may be doing this already. You may already be living a life of gratitude. And what a blessing that is. If you'd like company along the way, please visit rainelizabeth.org/redwoods-snow. My gratitude practice is called Redwoods and Snow. You can also simply email me healing@rainelizabeth.org. I will be happy to set you up. Now, without further ado, and with a full heart and a grateful mind, body, spirit, I introduce to you Donnia Anastasia. Let's jump in. Hey, Donnia.
Hi, Rain.
I am so happy you're here. Donnia Anastasia. I want to know everything about your name.
Well, there's quite a story, actually. My first name, Donnia, is a derivative of Donna, and it's Italian or of origin. But as far as I know, I have zero Italian blood in my family line. I was the firstborn daughter, so my mother's name was Donna, and she wanted a derivative of Donna. In Italian, it's pronounced Donnia, which I still get that a lot. And in the course of our experiences together, you've probably heard me say once or twice, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't need to correct somebody or re-pronounce my name for somebody. So that's literally been every single day of my life, which used to drive me batty. And I knew when I was older, I was going to change it. But I kind of look forward to it now. And I kind of enjoy talking about what my name means. It actually, Donnia means queen or world ruler.
Ooh.
I know, one of the definitions I found. And Anastasia is my chosen last name. It is not my maiden name. It's not a married name. When I was 16, I was involved with the Catholic faith with my family. And that was the time that we did our confirmation. And so we had to pick a confirmation name. And I can't remember at the time the real reason why I chose it. I think it was because I just loved the way that it sounded. And so recently, in doing more research on Saint Anastasia, she is the patron saint of healers.
You're the queen healer.
Ironically enough, but not really ironically, considering my experiences in my life, how everything happens for me. Yeah, and she was Christian, and she married a man who was not, so it was very tumultuous at the time. I believe there's different stories whether she came from Russia or the Croatian area, but when her husband died, I think in a battle, she made it her life mission to go to the prisons and offer healing herbs, potions for the prisoners who couldn't have access to it. And because of that, she was burned at the stake.
Oh.
So a couple things. I have been involved with herbalism for decades. Plants, I find, are so healing and they're so necessary. And there isn't a plant on the planet that doesn't serve a purpose. I also am a fire sign, and I love me a good bonfire. So yeah, and I chose this name. I actually just this year went through the legal system to get my name officially changed after a divorce. I didn't want to go back to my maiden name. And yeah, I kind of woke up with it saying, oh my gosh, I think that's what I want my name to be.
Hmm.
So I got to choose it.
So beautiful. And I'm so
Thank you.
glad you made that choice for yourself, that you got to choose your name.
Yeah, I didn't think it would feel as empowering as it does. But every time I say it, every time I have to spell it for somebody, it just rolls right off of my tongue. It's like I've always had this name,
Say your name again for us.
Donnia Anastasia.
Donnia Anastasia.
I think
Welcome.
the first time I ever said it out loud to somebody, it was a gentleman on the phone, and he was like, "Wow, it sounds like a Disney princess."
Yeah. Or a
I'm like,
healing queen.
or it's the healing queen, whichever. So thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
It's wonderful to be with you. And sometimes I begin conversations with gratitude. What are you grateful for today?
So many things, so many things. I am grateful, well, that my cat is sleeping right behind my computer at the moment. She's so
Mm.
sweet. She's purring. I'm grateful for the path that my life has brought me today. Everything that comes to me, everything that I get to experience now serves such a high purpose for me, whether it's allowing me to let more in or to just notice my behaviors and where I might be resisting things, situations, feelings, people. I find that that is part of my daily gratitude practice anyway, because I'm consciously choosing to be the full me. So I'm just grateful that I get to do that. Right.
Yeah, you get to be the full you. It's wonderful. And I love getting to know the full you. I'm jokingly calling you a queen healer, but I know that you are a healer. So share with us a little bit about your healing practice and what healing means for you.
Well, over the last few decades, I have studied, I have trained in various types of healing modalities. And at the time, it was probably done 85% unconsciously. 15% consciously, because I just knew I needed to have a change of career. I knew that I needed to not be behind a computer for 8 hours a day like I had been. And I just had this call to help others. I was put into a role as a very small child to be a caregiver, and moving through the resentment of that, I felt like I wanted to give back. I wanted to educate people that and remind people, get them to remember that they have innate healing capabilities within their bodies, within their hearts and their minds. And so it started with Ayurvedic practice and yoga some 20 some odd years ago when I lived in Santa Fe. And although I didn't study it officially, then it led me down this path of when something resonates with me, when something really makes sense within my whole being, that's when I feel called to then share it. I am a queen of research, of investigation, of double checking. My spelling is really off, but I don't really double check my spelling most of the time. But when it comes to information about this thing we call life, I like to gather information from multiple sources and kind of piece it together. So my healing career, I guess you'd say, kind of started with my massage therapy career. And I remember going to the first introduction meeting at the school, and I hadn't been really involved in any of that community. And from the first probably 10 minutes into it, I just knew that that's where I needed to go. So over the course of the last 16, 17 years, I have been in a very successful massage therapy practice, which I had with my husband at the time. He was also a massage therapist. And in this little rural community of mine, it was welcomed with open arms. And so we flourished. And the massage led to a deeper understanding of what the person presenting needs, right? Sometimes it is just an hour to relax. Sometimes it's more than that. And the clients that I've had that have allowed me to go deeper with that have really pushed the envelope of my own comfort zone of trusting myself and what I see when clients come to me. And that is where I've always been a wildflower picking kind of girl, not really knowing why, but now that I have within my healing practice, my building, I have an apothecary that prior to 2020, I was doing seasonal workshops with people in the community. We were making healing salves and natural skincare and different tea blends and you name it. And so in doing that, it was just natural to slide into my Ayurvedic practitioner role. And I have formal training in that. And I have to say, those healing sessions are by far my favorite to offer people. They're healing for me because I learned something new about myself. I learned something new about the person that I'm working with every single time. So healing for me, although very probably a little unconscious about it, has kind of been this underlying motivating factor my whole life. One of my biggest accomplishments in my life is I don't want to say beating the addiction, but being in recovery from addiction to alcohol. And that was at the tail end of my massage therapy schooling. And it's been 15 years now, and I'm still learning gifts from that addiction through my experiences with other humans in various ways. So, yeah.
What a path you've been on, Donnia.
Yes, that's probably why my feet are so calloused.
You've been walking miles in this lifetime.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm in good company. So
Yes. Yes. I identify as a healer too. So we get to connect in this healing way together. And I noticed my healing capabilities very young at just 4 years old, even though I didn't have the name like, oh, I'm a healer. That wasn't the thing. It's just I can recognize that inclination that I had that I continue to have. Was there a moment in your life that you noticed a healing inclination or a healing moment that kind of began your journey?
Well, it's an interesting question. Thank you. Because for 45 years or so, I have kind of clung to this story that I had in my head of the victim me, of why this had to happen to me. Because, like I mentioned before, at a very young age, I was asked by an adult to provide care for individuals in my family. And at the time, when you're 6, like you just mentioned, you really don't have any inclination that it's not appropriate, that it's not your responsibility. But in hindsight, I believe that that person just intuitively knew that I was going to be not necessarily a healer of sorts, but someone who was empathic and someone who could be gentle with other humans in vulnerable situations. And so it's kind of funny. It's just a few days ago, I rewrote that part of my story and held gratitude for that person who I had been blaming, right, for forcing me and asking me to do something that, a 6-year-old just shouldn't have to do. But I'm grateful for that because it not only brought out the sensitive empath in me, but it also allowed my artistic side to flourish as well. So it's that, and I can remember it too as if it happened yesterday when I was asked to be this. And I think part of my German background also was like, yep, they're going to ask me to do something. I'm going to do it with everything I have, and I'm going to be perfect at it. And I'm going to, be very organized and clear about it. So, yeah.
So you were 6, and in your family of origin, there was a moment where you felt asked to take care of other people. Is that right? And you heard the call and you achieved that, and you began this path of empathy and great care. And are there any more details that you want to fill in about what that was or how that evolved for you over time?
This interview comes at a perfect time because, like I had mentioned, I just recently have sat down and literally rewrote by hand all of the victimhood stories that I had carrying around on me, thinking that they were badges of honor, and instead turning them around into the beautiful gifts that I was given. I could have easily spent the rest of my life holding on to resentment and making myself sick, but I think every gift that has ever come to me has been born out of that situation. My mother was pretty fragile after the birth of my youngest sister,
Mm.
emotionally and physically. And I was a witness to a breakdown that eventually led to an ambulance crew pulling her from my home. And
Mm.
so, you can only imagine a little girl peeking around the corner and watching mom be taken away. And it was in that moment where I was with my father, and we sat and we cried, and I didn't understand what was going on. And that's when he said, I'm going to need some help.
Mm.
I'm going to need you to help me.
Wow.
And like I said, there was no second thought about it, right? It was dad's
Mhm.
asked me to do something, so this is what I'm going to do. That's not to say that I'm not a saint. I'm not playing the martyr card, but it did bring out in me a lot of anger and a lot of bitterness, which is what I had used alcohol to escape from.
I see.
And it wasn't until I realized where that had all come from, in recovery. I was always the why child. Everything was, well, why? But why? Why is it this way? And why is it this way? So my inquisitive nature was always at play, as it still is today, practicing the art of, investigating why things are the way they are. And specifically me, and how I have arrived here in this moment in time and space, with all of the things and the experiences that have been given to me. So, but I think at that moment, I think I felt very proud and very honored to help, to be of value, to be of service, right?
Mhm.
And what is the year? So 7 years ago, when my mom passed, I was her caregiver up until the very last day. And so in that moment, it all came kind of full circle with her and my journey with that. So it's really been a really beautiful ride. And I'm just practicing more and more, letting go of the oars and just floating down the river, as opposed to trying to turn me around in a little whirlpool.
You do
So,
that so well with such grace.
thank you.
Just as you were talking about your mom passing, a downpour
Yeah.
began here, just in its pouring right now in this moment. Is there anything more you want to
Mhm.
deepen into the passing of your
Mhm.
mother till the very last moment or day, I think you said, of her life?
Yeah. Yeah. She was out of the blue, really. She was diagnosed with a glioblastoma in the hippocampus of her brain. It was
Wow.
inoperable, and she was given about 8 weeks to live, which was literally almost to the day of her passing. And so I left my practice. My husband at the time was taking over and making sure that we were taken care of, but I went home, which wasn't that far away, but I literally just dropped everything because I knew in my soul that that was what I needed to do. And if anyone has ever spent time with someone who is making their transition out of this world,
Mm.
it's a very humbling experience. And it's one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had in my life. And it's also been a little bit of a catalyst as to why I am steering my practice in a certain direction, helping others, remembering their truth and who they are. Excuse me, I have a couple tears coming down.
Yes, take your time.
So, very distinctly, again, I remember the day that we got home from the hospital when we got the final news. And I sat there with my mom on the couch, and I grabbed her hand, and she was very pensive, just very serene looking. And I said, "How are you doing, Mom?" And she grabbed my hand, and she relayed to me what I find to be like I said, the impetus for some of my soul work moving forward. She said, my whole life I have told God, you can take anything you want. Take my hands, take my feet, take my leg if you have to. Just don't take my brain. And my mother was a very devout Catholic. She relied on her connection with God to get her through many things. And what I felt in that moment when she said that to me I didn't actually respond to her. I think I just sat in silence with her because it was such a explosive moment in my head that the truth of our thoughts creating our reality is really real, especially because as we both know, creator, source, God, universe, it doesn't listen and hear the way we think, the way that we hear and the way that we perceive information. It feels through vibration, right? And through frequency. And when my mother would say this to herself, it wasn't coming from a place of wholeness and health. It was coming from a place of fear and worry that she would lose that in her.
Mm-hmm.
And when it doesn't matter how pleasant we say something or how many times we smile as we're saying it, if our underlying frequency and our vibration is that of fear or lack or scarcity or anything that's lower vibrational emotion, the universe just gives you more of that. And I in no way blame her, right, for creating this, because that's just diabolical. I would never, I don't think any human really wants that to happen. But I think what is pressing me forward is making the connection with other humans of what thoughts do you have all day long? What thoughts
Mm-hmm.
are you really telling yourself? And where are you coming from when you're saying them? Are they coming from a place of love and compassion and joy? Or are they really coming from a place of insecurity or worry or anxiety? Because I feel that it really matters. It really makes a difference. And even in my own life, through various spiritual teachers and whatnot, something just clicked with me the other day. And it's funny, things are clicking faster. It's, when you hear a phrase or you hear a story 100 times, it never really shows a different meaning for you until it finally does.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I'm experiencing, I am one of my, quote unquote, love languages, I guess, is quotes and memes and affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
And so even when you're reciting an affirmation to yourself, whether it be for your health, for the peace on the planet, for anything, it's really important to watch where that's coming from. Meaning that, again, like your thoughts, if you're saying or doing anything with an underlying motive of anything less than love and compassion and peace and joy, you're going to get more of the feeling, not the words that you're saying out loud, but more of that feeling. So if you're in anxiety and you repeat these meditations or affirmations daily that I am whole and I am peace and I am this and I am that and life works out for me, you can say it until you're blue in the face. But if your inner landscape isn't resonating with it, it's going to bring you the opposite. So I am learning to not say anything, not to do anything, not to even work on my business or my practice if I'm in a low resonant stage. Throughout my years of practice with working with people too, if I don't get sick, but if I feel like I'm not going to be fully present and fully giving, I will cancel appointments. Hence, you and I need to reschedule. So those kind of important for people to understand. It's not a matter of the words that you say. It's what's coming from underneath it.
That is so good to remember. And what do you do instead if you find you're in a low frequency moment and maybe not you, but maybe somebody else would go to a mantra or an affirmation or something like what you've mentioned, but they're in anxiety or something like that? What would be another option for them, or what do you do for yourself?
This is such a good question because the answer can be very simple. First and foremost, I recognize where I'm coming from and that it's not in my best interest right now to do that affirmation and then I move. I either go outside and take a walk or even just stand outside and breathe some fresh air. I grab the vacuum and I clean corners 10 times. I wash the dishes. I do the laundry. I do the mundane, ordinary life necessary things just to get the energy that's stuck, the energy that is preventing me from coming from wholeness, from my alignment, to kind of dissipate, to kind of just shake it up a little bit. I have been in the practice lately of just turning my volume up on my radio at full blast and
Mhm,
dancing like kind of a mad woman.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
And so much so that a lot of the times I will find myself as I'm reciting a song or a lyric or something that I stop and I stand still and the tears just flow out of me.
mhm, mhm,
And then after that, there's an immediate sense of relief and peace and openness. And then I know there's my window. I can go back to that affirmation or go to my practice
mhm,
and do something that's going to propel me forward a little bit. So,
mhm, mhm,
no one really loves laundry and running the vacuum or doing the dishes or cleaning out the bottom drawer of your refrigerator, but they do have their place. They can be really therapeutic to just not even think about it. You don't have to think about how to wash dishes. You don't have to think really about how to clean anything. You just clean. And I can hear my mom in my head right now that when I was a kid and I would be bored or frustrated, she's like, just go clean something, will you? Just
mhm,
go pick a corner and clean it. And not only do you get the satisfaction of having something clean, but you've just now shaken up that energy
mhm,
that maybe have, holding you back a little bit. So
mhm, mhm. Excellent tips and tricks, and I get that what happens and what you describe is that the frequency breaks apart the stagnancy, or if there's a slower moving emotion or mind state, that the cleaning or the dancing or the really loud music actually changes the vibration of the space and therefore the body and therefore all the subtle bodies like the mind and the heart. And so as you mentioned, an opening. There's an opening for something new. And then in that moment, a person could go to whatever they were trying to do in the beginning from a different place within.
it's like I said, those cleaning things have to be done anyway, so you might as well do them with as much passion and vigor as you can. And honestly, when
Mhm,
you're doing things like that, I know when I'm not ruminating on anything specific. It's kind of like a meditation, really,
mhm,
as long as you're, mindful of that. So yes,
mhm,
thank you for that
mhm,
clarification, because I do the world of energy and vibration and frequency isn't new to me, but learning how to work with it
mhm,
in my own existence has been absolutely life changing. So
mhm. Yes.
yeah.
Yes, I feel that. And I wonder if it would be okay with you if I add in kind of a differing view, just so we can tease it out, because I
Mhm.
believe we're connected in some Vedic practices, the practices of ancient India. And is it okay if we go there into
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
So I'm so excited to talk about this because there are very few people I can talk about in this type of spirituality. And so I'm interested in just what will come about together in conversation. And sometimes in the Vedic practices, like repeating a mantra or using a mala in the practice of japa, which is basically repeating a mantra 108 times and continuing and looking for the space between the words. So there's a whole practice that I love in that direction of learning and being and healing and teaching. And part of that kind of practice is also to break up the energy, is also to find the truth of being inside of a tedious task. And I might feel anxious, or someone might feel whatever while doing that practice. And I'm just wondering what you think about that in your knowledge and your experience, just for the sake of conversation.
Yes, those are practices that I hold very dear to myself. In fact, for similarity's sake, the rosary in Catholicism is very similar to that, the purpose of the mala. And I don't know if I never, but up until recently, up until the happenings of last spring in my life, I was forced to go internally, to go into my inner landscape and to investigate and really, really dive deep into what was happening and why life was bringing me this experience. And I didn't go a day without my malas. Most often I use them at night to go to sleep. And I would repeat, I am safe. I am protected. I have everything I need. And I'm safe. I am protected. I have everything I need. Because deep down, I really didn't feel that way. And I wanted, my body needed so bad to feel that. I will carry it around with me daily. If I use it in my meditation practices just to keep me on track so that I come back to my mantra. I come back to, over the course of my life, I think I've had many mantras that I recite. The one that sticks out the most, though, is Satnam, is true identity. And I learned this in a Kundalini yoga class years and years and years ago. And it was short, it was sweet. I could remember it. And all this time, I really had no idea the power of what I was manifesting by saying those words all the time. When I found myself in an anxious situation, I would just find my mind automatically went to those words, and I would just keep repeating them and keep repeating them. Just this morning, while I was getting in the shower this morning, I was doing the Ho'oponopono prayer, and that was for my own forgiveness that I needed to start emerging in. So I find that, because like we've heard from pretty much everyone, the mind won't stop thinking. It will keep going. It keeps going. That's kind of what it does. So the purpose for using the malas and in meditation and the pausing is to not shut those thoughts off or cut them off, but to allow them to kind of just float in the background while you're bringing your attention to these words that embed a soul need into your present moment, that before you realize it, they start to become automatic for you. This is how we learn. This is by repetition. Well, at least I did anyway. And so these phrases and using the mala, because I am a very hands-on person, it's very helpful for me to do something with my hands. And I really think that it's a wise thing to do, to create, to cultivate, to find a mantra, to create one for yourself, or find one from an ancient text or from the Bible or from wherever, something that really resonates for you, but something that will help cultivate your needs moving forward. Whether you want to lower the anxiety or move into a better feeling space or better feeling thought, sometimes just the remembering of the words, when you can feel them in every fiber of your being, I think they just become magic. And it's such soul food for the mind. And it's a really great way to connect with the body in that way, because the body basically takes orders from the brain, right?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. So, and yeah, Sankalpa is the term my mentors use for self-healing mantra. So if you don't have one, there's a world of amazing teachers and spiritual texts and things out there. So, you don't have to pick one, right? You can have a couple of them, and whatever you need to hear yourself say for the day. There's a lot of power in that.
Absolutely. I feel that power in mantra, and Satnam being one of them, meaning true identity or true name. And one I use is Om Namah Shivaya, which is praise to Lord Shiva. And in the Vedic traditions, Shiva is the destroyer god. And we need three gods in this tradition, in the Vedic tradition. So we have Ram, who is the creator. We have Vishnu, which is the sustainer, and then Shiva, the destroyer. And the beauty of Shiva is that Shiva is so good at cutting through illusion, destroying what is not true, releasing anything no longer needed. So those are two mantras for our audience, that you and I each use. And like you said, there are many, many, many others. And one power I like to remember when using a mantra is that it's very helpful for the mantra to point to something that's true. And like you said, Donnia, true for the person saying it. So if it's meaningful for the individual, it's going to have power for that individual. And if one of my teachers, Swami Dayananda, who's no longer living in this world, he is a wonderful teacher, though. And he has this little book that he wrote about how to use a mantra and how to do japa meditation. And he used the example, if somebody says BMW, 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 it will likely break a pattern of thinking, but it's not pointing to something that's ultimately true. It's a BMW is a car that's true of this world, but it's not bringing a person beyond what's true in this world. And so it's helpful to find something that points beyond into the truth of being.
Very nice. Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. I mean, repeating BMW could definitely be a mind thought interrupt, right?
Mm-hmm,
Until you
mm-hmm.
find what you wanted. But yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful explanation of that.
There you have it, folks. The beginning of a conversation with Donnia Anastasia. Please visit her show, We Are the Medicine, and look for the specific We Are the Medicine hosted by Donnia Anastasia. We will explore the 11 guideposts to happy, healthy, long living. I actually thought there were only 10, but I just looked it up and there are 11. So, in our next episode, we go through these 11 guideposts, but we might only address 10. So, to find the 11th one, visit Donnia's show and listen for yourself. You may also find out about all Donnia offers on her website, DonniaAnastasia.com. As I was typing this in, I noticed there are 2 A's in a row. That's correct. DonniaAnastasia.com. She also has wonderful social media content. So find her on all the social media platforms. Thank you so much for being here. I will be with you next week for part 2. Thank you so much for listening. It has been a great joy to have your presence here in this podcast. I welcome you to celebrate the joy and wisdom in your life exactly as it is. And I welcome you to feel loved, fully loved, exactly as you are. www.rainelizabeth.org